The Woodshop is sponsored by Chefware Kits, with hundreds of items for wood turners. Alright, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about sanding again. I'm still getting a lot of questions on it, and I did a video a long time ago about it, but I'm going to do a little update on sanding. And somebody else wanted to see how I seal the wet wood up with paint, so I'm going to do that real quick too. Let's go ahead and get started. Alright, here's a box I'm working on. This is maple. It's burl. It's got a little bit of spalting and everything in it. So before you even start sanding, the most important thing is to try and make your last pass with the tools as smooth as possible. If you can get out most of the tool marks in that last pass, sanding is going to be much easier. You're not sanding out the little ridges from the tool marks. So that's probably the most important thing, is try and make that last pass as clean as possible. So this has in grain, cross grain, everything in it. So let's go ahead. I usually start with, depending on what it is, I start with 100 or 150. If it's super clean, I'll start with 180, or depending on if it's soft, you can even go up higher than that. So what I do is I use cloth back sandpaper, and this is it's just a good quality sandpaper. I've used it for quite a while. The paperwork's fine too. I like this because I dip it in the oil. I'm gonna dry sand this one to just kind of show you, because I know some people don't like the oil. So I turn the lathe speed down. I usually sand it right at 600. I don't go much lower than that, and unless it's I don't know, something big that I want to slow down even more. And it's the slower it's going, the better you're going to be sanding. Because, and I'll explain this in a couple of videos too. You have your grain, and it's standing up like this, depending on which way you're going. So if you're sanding in grain, obviously this would be, looking down on it that way. Your fibers are standing up like this. If you sand at high speed, you're just barely touching the tops of those, and it's pushing them over in a arc like this instead of actually cutting them off. So I slow the speed down, which makes the sandpaper cut better, and I reverse it. So each time I'm going to start with 150 here. We're going to sand in this direction, and we're going to turn the lathe around and sand in that direction, so that it is pushing this back and forth and actually sanding it down smooth instead of just pushing it all in one direction. It's going to be a much cleaner cut, much cleaner finish when you're done. The other thing is, don't reuse your sandpaper. I'm going to sand with this, and I'm going to sand the whole piece, get all the little fine tool marks I can out of it. And then I'm throwing that in the garbage. It's no longer 150, but don't use it as 150 and then come back and guess and think it's going to be 220 the next time or whatever. Just throw it away. You're just going to be much happier if you get a clean piece and you know exactly what grit it is. So what I do, go in reverse. Yeah. Start in that direction. Put it underneath it. I'm always move the sandpaper. I don't just sit in one spot. I'm always trying to move it back and forth. Keep it nice and smooth. Turn this off. Feel it. There's a little bit of tool marks right there I can feel. Just kind of inspect it. See if there's any little nicks in it anywhere, any grain standing up. And if there is, just keep going with it until you get all that out. If there's a tool mark in there or some torn grain and you keep moving through the grits, it's, depending on how deep it is, it's not going to take it out. If you're up to 320, it's not going to cut in there and get rid of tool marks. Or if it does, it'll take you forever. Go back and forth on it. So that feels pretty smooth. Just kind of inspect it and make sure there's no little catches or anything on it, and then move on to the next grit. So I just turn the lathe speed around, back over it, do the same thing. Now at this point, as soon as you switch grits, keep in mind, as long as you got all your tool marks and little nicks out of it, all this piece of sandpaper here is doing is sanding out the 150. This is 180. That's all this is for now, is getting rid of those scratches from the 150. Just go back over it, wipe it off, and blow it off with a dust collector or a dust air compressor, and just kind of inspect it and see and make sure that all the little scratches are out of it. And you'll be able to see kind of too. My dad owned a polishing shop for years, and he said that was the hardest thing to teach people, was being able to see the bigger scratches in something. So if they were sanding some aluminum rims to be polished, whatever they started with, when they moved on to the next grit, you need to be able to see into it and look past all the fine scratches and make sure that they're all fine scratches instead of one large one, and that was caused by the grit before. And you need to get that out before you move on to the next grit. Now wood's a little bit harder to see down in there and tell the bigger scratches, but you can still do it. Just blow it off and inspect it and make sure it's good. So just gonna go over it a few more times. All right. Now I'm pretty sure that is nice and clean. And this is a box too, so I'm not sanding the 10 in there because I want the lid to fit nice and tight, but that's the only reason for that. So then we move on to our next grit. Just put the lid back forward. Don't drop the sandpaper. I'll go grab that real quick. But just inspect it and make sure that they're all the same cuts on it, I guess, is what they are basically, is just that they're all the same size. And you can just kind of check and make sure. And at this point, you're only a few grits into it, so if you see a deep gouge or something, you can come in and go back and touch it up. But problem is, if you just leave the lathe running and sand up and you get done with 400 or 600 or whatever, you got to start all over at the beginning. So, and I'll bring in the close-up of this when I'm done too. And two, see how it gets clogged up? That's why I use the oil, is because it cleans the sandpaper off as it's going to. You just dip it in the oil and it cleans it back up and it gets it all clogged out. But if you just run it in one spot like that and don't clean it up, that's a lot smoother than this side. You can feel the difference. It's night and day. This is smooth, this is rough. So you need to get it cleaned off, or grab a new piece of sandpaper, because this is what is this? This is 320, I think. So at that point right there, if you just run it in one spot, this is nowhere near 320. It's literally, maybe 600 or less. So you need to keep the paper cleaned off as you're going to. Come in here. You can see that's 600 right there. So you can already see it has a nice satin shine to it, and that's before we put anything on it. And so you can check all the grain. Hopefully you can see, maybe I'll take some still pictures of it. But there's no little torn spots, and that's just basically, you take your time, and that's what's going to give you the best finish. All right, And then I talked a little bit about drying the wood, but I didn't actually show you how I do it. So basically this is it. I grab an old bucket of paint. Like I said before, you pick these up at Home Depot or Lowe's. People don't pick them up. They got a bargain table there sometimes, or some recycling centers actually have it too. I just take a piece of wood, clean the dust off, and dip it in. If it doesn't fit in there, just use a paintbrush, like big round or something, and just paint it. So that's all I do. I go up about 2 inches, and that way it seals up the ends, and that actually helps quite a bit. Don't just dip it right on the very bottom. Just go in a couple of inches, and it's just latex paint. There's nothing special about it. You can do the same process with wax. They actually sell some wood sealers too, but that is it. Just that. I put it in on some stickers. So you want to get some airflow underneath, above and below this. So I sticker it, and that's just lattice. You just take pieces of lattice, put one on each side, line up 6 or 8 of these, then set another row on. You can do the same with the bigger bowl blanks. As long as it's getting airflow all the way around it, that works out great. So that's all I do is to seal them up, is that right there. All right, I hope that helped. And again, with the sanding, that your final cut, try and get that just as clean as possible, and it'll save a lot of headaches with sanding. But thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.